and you know you disappointment who drives those tears from your eyes. And do you know my Jesus? And do you know my friend? Have you heard that he loves you and that he will abide to the end? Have you heard that he loves you and that he will abide till the end? Amen.
Well, it's good to be in Santa Barbara. I actually was asked if this was the first time I was here, and I said yes, but actually I realized many years ago I came for an interview as I was finishing medical school in Southern California and had to apply for residencies, and my residency was adult diseases of the internal organs. And Santa Barbara had it's more of a community hospital, not a university hospital, but I heard it was one of the better community ones, and I remember seeing the temperatures here and saying it would be a little cooler than Loma Linda area, and ended up coming here for a short interview. And then you, of course, rank them, and Santa Barbara didn't get ranked as high as other programs, and so I ended up not coming to Santa Barbara and getting a program that was ranked higher on the list, which I'm grateful for. It was a great training that I got, but that was my only time in Santa Barbara, just a few hours for that interview. And I was thinking how my life probably would have been very different had I ended up here for that residency. But the brain is also an internal organ, and over time, although I emphasized a lot of critical care work, particularly emphasizing gastroenterology, cardiology, and pulmonary medicine, we were seeing more and more depression, and even in the outpatient setting, and I recognized that the traditional approaches were quite limited in their effectiveness. Usually people ended up, once they were on medicine, they ended up having to have more medicine over time, and many times they were seeing us on 4 or 5 different medicines and still having severe depression and significant anxiety, and I realized that it would be worthwhile to try to get to the underlying cause of these diseases. Since that time, it's even become more common. So fortunately, there are actually not too complex, pretty simple approaches for eradicating depression and anxiety. You'll see some of the results here at the end, but the result actually is pretty cost effective as well. I actually told our team before the last program that if this was some sort of specialized surgery that produced these results, we'd be able to charge 15 times the amount, and people would be lining up on the streets to get it done. But it actually requires the participation of the patient. We tell people it's not our program that works, it's them working the program that works. But many people are discouraged by that because they feel like they don't have any self-control. But that is something that we have found as well. It's very gratifying to take someone with low self-control and within a few days turn them into someone with high self-control. And that actually can happen. And of course, at first you have to be able to manage your emotions in order for that to happen. So the key to self-control is actually the ability to manage your emotions. But Dr. Baumeister now, who is the most quoted researcher in all the world, says that the door to the good life, everyone's wanting the good life, the door to the good life is through comprehensive self-control. So if you don't have self-control, or if you know someone who doesn't have self-control, send them to Weimar, and they will come back with self-control. Or they'll stay there until they do have self-control. But will come back. Not everyone's able to come back in 10 days, but most will, and some we keep an extra 7 days for about a 17-day. I'm speaking of the residential program. So let's get into what depression is. We have a lot of people that deny that they have depression, even though they do, because they don't understand what it is. The Psychiatric Bible has 9 diagnostic hallmark symptoms for depression. The first is deep sadness or emptiness. This can sometimes be accompanied by feelings of hopelessness. Women tend to notice the deep sadness more so than men because they're more likely to experience crying spells. And they'll be crying over things that they didn't used to cry over, and so they'll end up in the doctor's office complaining about that, and of course that doctor's office visit ends with them being sent out the door with an antidepressant. The antidepressant most often causes a flattening of their emotional affect, so when they no longer care about something, they don't cry about it, and so they think it's helping in regards to, I'm not crying anymore. But they don't experience the joys in life that they could have when it's very joyful as a result of the effects of the most common medicines. Men tend to feel more of the emptiness, but they don't seek medical care when they feel that way. They just think it's a part of their life. The second major symptom is apathy. This is when you wake up in the morning and you're not excited about the day. You get up out of a sense of duty and responsibility, but not interest. And that can happen once in a while to anybody, but when it happens the majority of the time, that is distinctly abnormal. And you can even realize that things that where you used to experience pleasure doing those things, you're no longer experiencing the pleasure. And that's also part of that apathy. I think there was a popular song written maybe close to my generation, which says, I get no satisfaction. That's the apathy part of things. And we've had individuals come to our program that their relatives would try to get them out of the house. There's a new restaurant in town. I think you'll like it. Come out here with us. And they will come to that restaurant, and they're thinking the whole time they're there, I want out of here and I want back home. And we had one woman, that was the last time she had been out of her house, was 4.5 years on that experience. And then she was in her house for 4.5 years and didn't leave her house until her daughter brought her to our residential program. Interestingly, she's been out of the house every day since then. And her depression has resolved. Increased irritability. This is when you're more irritable than you used to be. Things that didn't used to tick you off are ticking you off. And this is a common symptom. Or you've slowed down, even brain-wise slowed down. Either one of those count as a symptom of depression. An increase or decrease in weight or appetite. What's more common, weight gain or weight loss? Weight gain is more common. Why is it more common? Because you eat comfort foods to feel better. It's called self-medicating. What are those comfort foods? Yes, it's normally sugary foods or unhealthy foods. Lots of salt, lots of fat, things along that line. And so those foods can actually make you feel better short term, but then there's a nadir in the chemistry, and then you want more. And it's a vicious cycle. We'll never solve the obesity epidemic in our country until we solve the mental health issues behind it. And interestingly, in our program, people that need to lose weight will lose weight, And we also have those, if you notice, a decrease in weight or appetite. You can be underweight as a result. Anorexia can even hurt to eat, and those people will all gain weight in the same program. Sleep disturbance. What's the most common sleep disturbance? Insomnia is pretty common. Your head hits pillow and your mind keeps going. But even more common than that is you're able to go to sleep, but then you wake up too early and can't get back to sleep. And the more severe the depression, the earlier you tend to wake up. And then we have individuals that want to sleep all the time. We had a woman come to our program this year. She was sleeping 20 hours a day, barely awake long enough to survive. Out of the 4 hours she was awake, 3 of those 4 hours she was in bed directing her family before she came to the program. Now she only sleeps 8 hours a night and feels good and doesn't want to sleep all the time anymore and is really able to produce. Decrease in focus or concentration. This is when you're reading something interesting to you, you get to the bottom of the page and you realize you forgot what was at the top of the page. And you have to go back and read it again. And it might even happen a second time. You're down at the bottom of the page, hey, I missed that, and you're going back to the top of the page. This can have an issue in regards to your ability to learn, academics. It's one of the reasons why there's so many academic challenges in college-age youth today, is because of this symptom of depression. Fatigue, this is different than apathy. Apathy, you don't have the interest. Fatigue, you don't have the energy. That's right. Feelings of worthlessness. When it gets to that stage, we know it's a more severe depression. Individuals will be convinced that they might be better off not existing, or they would think that they are a burden on their family. If you have any ability to be of use to yourself or others, you're clearly not worthless. And so there's no one that comes to our program that's worthless, but they will sure feel that way, and it's a sign of severe depression. And it's also a sign that people with depression or anxiety actually are not thinking rationally. They have a tendency to think negative thoughts and repetitive negative thoughts. 80% of their thoughts are negative and 95% of them are repetitive. And if we actually dig deep, they're not even accurate. And so this is why we give these books out called Telling Yourself the Truth, so that you can fix these distorted ways of looking at others or looking at yourself. And then finally, morbid thoughts. Morbid thoughts is where you think you would be better off dead, or it might be self-mutilation. It might be thinking that you'd be better off if someone else died. Now, you don't need to have all 9 of those symptoms. If you have 5 or more, that's major depression. If you have 2 to 4, that's minor depression. And you don't even have to have those symptoms all the time. You just need to have it the majority of the time. But the worthlessness and morbid is always abnormal. So those are abnormal thoughts. Now, a lot of times people with depression get the idea that there's not much we can do. Got to go to the doctor and get my medicine and maybe go to a counselor and hope for the best. But the majority of Americans think that this is a lifelong illness that you're going to have to just, wax and wane on the rest of your life. That is not true. Depression and anxiety can be completely eradicated, and it is on a regular basis in those that access our community program that you're going to have here. By the way, are you going to be running a community program this fall? I heard that you ran one, but I assume there's probably going to be a community program. I don't see Colleen here this minute to tell us about that, but hopefully if there's a community program here that you are taking advantage of that. Anxiety, it turns out, is even more common than depression now. Feeling on edge, racing thoughts. Form of anxiety that's very common, post-traumatic stress disorder, where there's triggers and avoidance types of things. Social phobias are at an all-time high. I can guarantee you there were people who wanted to come here tonight, but they were afraid to be seen. and they did not want to be out in public. We call that social appearance anxiety, where they just know that they're going to be judged negatively by others when someone views them. And then just being frightened over the fact that they might have to communicate with someone else. Social phobias are becoming much more common. Panic disorder as well. And of course, there can be a host of physical symptoms with anxiety: rapid heart rate, shortness of breath, chest pain, nausea are just a few of those. To give you an idea how much mental illness has increased, the proportion of the population reporting self-harm of 16 to 24-year-old girls in 1993 was 1%. In 2000, I think I need to correct this. I think it's switched around. In 2000, it was not 4%, it was 2%. And in 2007, it was 4%. So 2000 should say 2%. What was it in 2014? This was before the pandemic. It had gone up to 26%. By the way, I'm going to correct that on the fly. This was a slide that, there we go. Needs to be corrected so it can be accurate. They haven't even measured it post-pandemic, because it's even significantly higher than that. A lot of things quit during the pandemic. And often these self-mutilating girls are not trying to end their life. They're just trying to get rid of their emotional pain by inflicting some physical pain to distract themselves from their emotional pain. And then it can be set up as an addiction. The cost of depression is also pretty amazing. Children or adults who suffer from depression have lower incomes, lower educational attainment, fewer working days each year, and depression leads, if they are working, to 7 fewer weeks of work per year, a loss of 20% in lifetime income at least, and a lifetime loss for each family who has a depressed family member of $300,000. That was actually a decade and a half ago this study was done. We know it's now significantly worse than that. But a lot of people will consider, hey, if it's going to cost me a few $1,000s to get better, I don't have that money and it's not worth it. Guess what happens if you do get better? You are going to have a lot more money. You're going to be a lot more employable. It'll be one of the best investments you've made, and you will rise in that employment. I'll tell you the story of someone. We see this in every program, but sometimes dramatically so. Depression and anxiety is not something that's going to help your financial health, and so it is worthwhile to spend to get it better. Now, this is a graph of the synapse, and these green balls are serotonin. Now, serotonin has to be made in the brain. The serotonin made in your gut does not cross the blood-brain barrier. So we have to have this manufacturing plant in the brain. Serotonin, what does it help us with? It helps us not to be so irritable. It helps us to be more agreeable, more of a team member, a better family member. It does enhance mood, and it also helps us with sleep, because if we make enough serotonin in the daytime, we can make enough melatonin at night. Sometimes the problem is you're not making enough serotonin. That is very common, or you may not have enough receptors. And so the pharmaceutical industry has not been able to help you make more serotonin. Their drugs don't help you to do that, nor do they help you build up more receptors. Now, as you can see there, there's that pink reuptake channel on both slides. After that green ball has bound onto the synapse, Notice that arrow on that left-hand diagram. That arrow means that ball has done its work, it caused a synapse, and now it's being vacuumed back up into the neuron. Why is it vacuumed back up? So that it can be used again. It takes 1 million ATP molecules, that's a lot of brain energy, to produce one of those serotonin molecules. And so as we vacuum it back up, it saves brain energy. A lot of brain fog actually is related to depletion of these things. So when you take the most common antidepressant, and notice it's SSRI there, this is the right-hand column. What does SSRI stand for? It stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Now, that's a sophisticated name, and the doctor is handing you this drug and saying this will help your serotonin levels. But it actually should be called serotonin vacuum cleaner plugger, because it's plugging the vacuum cleaner to clean up that synapse and for it to be used again. But that wouldn't be as popular a marketing ploy to name it that way. And so they name it something where the typical person has no idea what it's doing, but they know it has serotonin in there, and so they know it's supposed to be helping them. Notice what that SSRI does. It actually goes into that little pink reuptake channel and plugs it, and as a result of it plugging it, notice how much more serotonin is in the synapse. So it does help you to have more synaptic activity, but notice how much less serotonin is in the neuron. Dr. Whitaker has studied this from Temple University, and he says whenever antidepressants are introduced in a society, the rates of depression skyrocket a year or two later. Why is it going up? Because we're actually depleting the very neuron of what it was already short in. And so this is why the drug can work for a while, but then you have to keep going back. I don't know if you've noticed, but when your doctor gives you the SSRI, he doesn't say, okay, take this for the rest of your life and you're going to be fine. He says, take this and see me again in just a few months, sometimes 30 days, sometimes whatever, because chances are it's going to quit working and you're going to need to increase it, and then you're going to need other medicines. And so we turn people into psychiatric cripples by plugging vacuum cleaners instead of actually helping the person to find out why were they not making enough serotonin to begin with. One of the things that will happen if you come to our program and you have depression or anxiety, within 7 days you will know precisely exactly why you have it, and you will know precisely what to do to get rid of it and to have it completely eradicated. We're going to find out if you're not making enough serotonin, not only if you're not going to make enough, but why you're not making enough, and what you can do to actually increase your brain's ability to make it. If you don't have enough receptors, we'll be able to tell you what you need to do to build up those receptors. Now, there's different causes for different individuals. It's not the same cause. This is why we do an extensive evaluation and workup in everybody to find precisely those causes. Nature magazine recently came out with an entire article on depression. And they said in a study conducted in real clinical settings, a common antidepressant produced a response in just under half of the participants and achieved full remission in only what? 28%. So less than half even get somewhat better. 28% have a very nice response for a short term. 5 decades of work on antidepressant drugs have not made them more likely to lift people out of depression. Medications and psychotherapies help some people with the disease. I agree with that. But notice the next statement. Fail how many? Many others. And so they implored doctors and researchers to go back to the drawing board to find out how we can do a far better job than medication. Within a few weeks of this publication, we published our study in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, identifying depression and its causes. At the time I started to do this research, I was told by psychiatrists that I was actually rotating with, and I had a lot of respect for, they were good psychiatrists, that if I did a search on this, I might find 12 or 14 causes of depression. I started to become depressed myself when I had found cause number 70, and I still wasn't done yet. There are over 100 different definite identifiable causes of depression. And by the way, that's what you'll find out, exactly what causes are on board. And it's never a single cause. There's normally, as you'll find out, multiple causes. There's 10 categories of causes. After I found 70, I began to categorize them. And I found out that there were 10 categories. And if 4 or more of these 10 categories are active, depression or anxiety is going to result. It's just a given. Our brain can undergo some pretty bad hits, but when it undergoes 4 hits from 4 different areas, that's when it's going to manifest itself in some emotional issues or mental health issues. It's kind of, have to, think about it almost as the boxer, They can take a pretty big blow to the head, but after it starts, they're getting blow after blow from different angles and different things like that. That's when the boxer is going to keel over and not be able to get back up. So the more categories involved, and we'll have people come to our program that might have 8, 9, some rarely have all 10 categories involved. They might think, wow, I'm a hopeless case. I've got all 10 categories active in me. Actually, that's good news, because finding the cause and eliminating the reversible causes, and at least 8 or 9 of those categories are reversible causes, will effectively help in treating depression and anxiety. And like I say, if there's 1 cause that's still there or 2 causes, that's not enough. So even if we get it down to 1 or 2, it'll make a dramatic difference. So I already went to some of the symptoms of lack of serotonin. So let's go through these 10 categories. The first category is actually genetics. If your mom or dad had significant depression or anxiety, you're going to be more likely to have it as well, because you have some of the same genes. Genetic mutations can make it more difficult for you to make some of these neurotransmitters. Now, when we first started our program 20 plus years ago, science hadn't advanced enough, and I was still okay doing the program because so many of the other causes were reversible. And I used to say, genetics, there isn't anything you can do about that, but if that's your only hit, you're not going to end up with depression and anxiety, which is true. It takes more than genetics. Genetics loads the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. But what I didn't realize is that our research was actually going to uncover that we can shut down the effects of that mutated gene by nutrition and lifestyle principles, so that it's not even, it can't even be felt, or it's not going to produce any adverse effect. That's the area that we call epigenetics. So epigenetics, don't just look at your genes and think you're doomed. Those genes do not have to be active, and nutrition and lifestyle approaches can do amazing things to deactivate those genes. So one of the ways we look at is our personalities. People who are more obsessive, they're more controlling, they have this calm exterior but tense interior. Maybe they did well with SSRIs, but as the doses are going up, they're attempting to tolerate the side effects. Interestingly, this genetic defect can also be helped by light therapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. But if you have the genetic defect of undermethylation, which is one of multiple that we look for in our program, undermethylation is meaning that you can't add a carbon and 3 hydrogens very easily. Your methyl donation affects 3 different chemicals there: dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. So it's not just a serotonin issue. It can be a dopamine issue as well. And the treatment actually can be pretty simple with a nutritional supplement called S-adenosylmethionine or saffron. Now, those are two of the most expensive nutraceuticals sold because they are effective, but also because it's really expensive to actually formulate them. Calcium and magnesium are cheaper. That can also help as well. And vitamin B12 can help this condition, or methylfolate, and other supplements also can have a role to play. But interestingly, there have been 115 clinical trials, randomized controlled trials now on SAMe, that have found to be helpful in treating depression, particularly in those that have the undermethylation gene. And so, and it won't worsen sexual function like the SSRIs will. It will actually help it. And you won't have the weight gain. You don't develop a tolerance. It's not like you need more and more over time. And it can even help physical issues such as osteoarthritis and fibromyalgia and Parkinson's disease. Where is saffron found? It's actually in those red stems there. And you might have actually eaten it as a spice. There have been 7 randomized controlled trials on saffron, and found that it was actually as effective as the most common and classic SSRI, fluoxetine, in a review of major depression. And it also improved memory, which the SSRIs don't do, and it also improved premenstrual dysphoria or premenstrual syndrome. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to have a beneficial effect. So 30 milligrams equivalent to Prozac 20 milligrams, and even smelling it can help. And interestingly, there was a study showing that it actually even works better than the leading drug for Alzheimer's disease in regards to helping your memory. It seems to inhibit the amyloid beta protein development. This was a study published in Psychological Medicine just a few years ago. No, I'm sorry, not a few years ago. Notice it was accepted for publication April 1 of 2025. So this is just a few weeks ago, is accurately stated. And for years, what we were doing in regards to nutrition, lifestyle, and nutraceutical principles, when we first started to do that, and there was a lot of evidence even back then. I don't want to get in the way of the projector there. But for years, individuals would call what we are doing alternative medicine. Have you heard that phrase? In other words, real medicine and scientific medicine is what your doctor is doing, but if you go to this place in Weimar, that would be an alternative medicine approach. And alternative medicine is almost synonymous with non-scientific medicine. But the science was there for it. But now, if you take a look at the studies that are coming out, it's very clear that what we're doing is actually the scientific medicine. And the traditional medicine should be considered alternative medicine, because even the peer-reviewed trials are showing that it's not very effective. It might help some, but then you're going to be tied in the psychiatric cripple aspect of things. And why is it considered now to be scientific medicine? Well, you know, here's part of the issue of what some doctors will complain about. They'll say, are there randomized controlled trials? A randomized controlled trial is very important to do for a pharmaceutical agent that's a foreign agent. Why is that? It's a foreign substance. It could have some significant adverse effects, and you better do randomized controlled trials to show that it's better than placebo and its side effect profile is actually worth it to be released on the market. But doctors, realizing that that had to be done for pharmaceuticals, they will say that, well, how do you know that it's the blueberries that got you better? Because there's no placebo for eating a placebo blueberry. In other words, someone can tell right away, this is not a real blueberry. In a placebo, it has to look the same, it has to feel the same and taste the same, so you don't know. That's why it's called a randomized trial, and you're actually blinded. You don't know if you're taking the placebo or the actual medicine. Now, one group actually got around that. They found that grape juice is actually quite healthy in a randomized controlled trial. How did they do the control group? They actually used grape Kool-Aid equated to the same taste. So it looked the same, it tasted the same, but far different as far as the result. So you actually can do randomized controlled trials. It's just a lot more difficult. By the way, exercise. A lot of times people are wondering. And by the way, the studies show if you get physically fit, it's actually better for your brain than it is your body. Physical fitness is great for your body, but it's better for your what? It's better for your brain. But doctors aren't prescribing exercise for people with depression. They're saying, well, they're too depressed to exercise. They're not going to exercise anyways. But they're not necessarily encouraging the exercise. And then if you get down to it, they'll say, well, I haven't seen a randomized controlled trial on exercise. How are you going to fake someone into believing that they're exercising when they're not exercising? So they raise a standard that's actually impossible to obtain and then criticize nutrition and lifestyle principles because there's no way that you can actually put a placebo there. We don't need to take things that are healthy and don't have any risks and submit it to necessarily a randomized controlled trial. But there are enough nutraceuticals on the market now that if you read this study, I know it's fine print. We'll get to the abstract here. A 192 clinical trials involving 17,437 patients and 44 nutraceuticals were eligible for inclusion in the highest level of evidence that's looked at. So now the randomized controlled trials are there, because if it's in a nutraceutical in a capsule, then you can put a placebo capsule. And so that's how you can actually compare among it. And they found out that out of those 44, there were 4 nutraceuticals just alone that were superior efficacy to any antidepressant. And the side effects were actually placebo side effects. In other words, the side effects were not near as significant as the antidepressant side effects. They also found out many more that actually were helpful even if you were on an antidepressant. So you could be on an antidepressant plus this nutraceutical. And interestingly, the ones that show up here that are better in monotherapy are the 2 of the ones that we just talked about, SAMe and saffron. We've actually formulated those 2 together. We're the first ones to do that, and it's actually less expensive than taking SAMe or saffron combined. And so when this study came out, we weren't a bit surprised because we had been seeing this clinical effect for a long time. And so if your doctor, in fact, I'll forward and have Lancet Psychiatry say this, one of the most prestigious European psychiatric journals. Another category, we're going through the 10 categories, adverse childhood experiences. Do you think those are going up or going down? They're going up. Neglect of children is at an all-time high. Abuse of children is at an all-time high. And these can have permanent side effects. We pride ourselves sometimes in our sexual revolution and the sexual freedom, but these things have sexual complications. And childhood sexual abuse is at an all-time high in our society. I wouldn't call that a progressive society. I would call it a regressive society. And the studies clearly show that depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, getting addicted to severe things like alcohol and opioids and illicit drugs are significant in those that have had this abuse. And by the time they're 30, PTSD, decreased self-worth, decreased life satisfaction, they need more doctor visits, and they're much more likely to be a welfare recipient and not successful in life. These things cause attachment disorders, where we're not able to attach in a healthy, normal way to our parents. And this is why with many individuals experiencing this, they actually need a residential program to help them to recognize the blind spot areas that they have in relating to others. And it can be helped significantly. So developmental hits, we used to say, well, that's just happened. There's nothing we can do about it now, and let's just work on all the other things. But there are things that we can do about it, and we can significantly help the individual form healthy attachments. Lifestyle causes, lack of physical fitness, I mentioned. But if you have the ability to get physically fit walking outside versus being in a gym, what's going to be better for you? Walking outside, you get fresh air, you get light, you get near infrared light, and you also get the essential oils emitted from the leaves of the tree that can have a very positive effect on the brain. We call that forest bathing. Circadian rhythm hits. This has to do with your sleep-wake cycle. It's better to sleep at regular times and wake up at regular times, and you'll make double the melatonin if you go to bed at 9 o'clock versus midnight. Screens have also been shown to throw off your circadian rhythms. Those blue lights from the screens, particularly an hour before bedtime, are going to delay your sleep and also decrease the amount of melatonin. So screens are having their effect. We actually fix the circadian rhythm hit utilizing light therapy. The blue light in the morning can set your body clock when you're using it consistently 7 days in a row. It will also increase serotonin synthesis, improve your mood, improve social interaction, and definitely improve your sleep. Addiction causes are at an all-time high. And addiction will lower your dopamine set points and your dopamine activity. This is the area where you have an interest in learning. There's probably a lot of people that should have been here tonight, but their dopamine levels were too low and they didn't have an interest in learning. And so they didn't come out. And fortunately, those dopamine set points can be reset, but we have to work on overcoming the addiction. But addictions are hard to overcome in part because many times people are using that as a form of self-medicating for their mental health issues. But if we find out the cause of the mental health issues and reverse that, then it's so much easier to get over the addiction. This is why we've had individuals. We had one woman in the Auburn area. She was only 30. She was from wealthy parents. Auburn is right next to Weimar there in Northern California. And her parents had sent her to 10 different alcohol rehab treatments, many of them months, and she would relapse every time. She heard about our program, and her parents said, we're not paying anymore, particularly, how many days did they say this was? 10 days? No way. We are not paying it. Well, since Weimar's close by, the parents came by because she was really, she had met someone else who had had success there. So the parents came by and they said, okay, well, it's not that much anyways, not near as much as we had paid for some of these programs. They had paid up to $100,000 a program. So, all right, we'll go ahead and pay for this one. She has completely overcome her alcohol as a result of being there 10 days. How did that happen? It happened because we found the precise reason as why she felt that need to self-medicate. And also, as mentioned, one of the things that we don't neglect in our program is the spiritual aspect of the program. As we enhance the frontal lobe through practical spiritual things that we can hang our hat on and we can grab onto and aspire to, it significantly helps in our ability to overcome addictions. So whether it's marijuana, whether it's drugs, whether it's sex addictions, whether it's food addictions. By the way, unhealthy food. Recent study was done on the 5 most addictive unhealthy foods in America. This was a study of Americans. What was in the top 5? Okay, someone said chips. That was number 3. Ice cream was number 5. cookies number 4, chips number 3, number 2, chocolate. And number 1, cheese pizza. What do those things have in common? Fat, sugar, salt combined. They can lower your dopamine set points, and they're not actually getting to the root cause of your mental health issues. So this is something that can actually be easily worked on in our program. Marijuana use is going up considerably, and it's not been good for the mental health of Americans. By the way, marijuana can make you feel calmer, and so this is why some people like to utilize it, but it increases the risk of psychosis, paranoia, decreases your emotional intelligence, your self-control. But there is a substance called Selexon that can also help your anxiety, but it actually enhances your frontal lobe, unlike marijuana. It's also not sedating, and it also has been shown to be an effective antidepressant in randomized controlled trials. And 80 milligrams a day can relieve generalized anxiety disorder in 76% with double improvement compared to placebo, and it improves sleep quality if you're losing sleep due to anxiety. In addition, it helps you to do better if you have test anxiety. It helps you to do better on a test. 6-week trial showed it to be comparable to lorazepam. That's Ativan, but Ativan is a frontal lobe suppressant. You take that before a test, you'll feel better about taking the test, but your test scores will be far worse because your frontal lobe has gone down, where this will not decrease the frontal lobe. And since lavender oil showed no sedative effects in our study, has no potential for drug abuse, Selexon appears to be an effective and well-tolerated alternative to benzos for amelioration of generalized anxiety. But interestingly, this is not widely known. Pretty much anyone knows Ativan, lorazepam, they know about marijuana. Why? Because people are focused in on things that have significant risks with maybe a little bit of benefit. But things that are only beneficial, it's like Americans aren't interested. Oh, that's only going to benefit me? Well, that's not interesting. I won't even try it. I mean, talk about irrational thinking at an all-time high. So dopamine receptors go up when we get rid of these addictions. A lot of addictive people think if I don't participate in this addiction, I'm not going to have fun anymore. I noticed some of the looks on your faces when I said chocolate. It's like, if I give up chocolate, how am I going to enjoy eating anymore? But you know what? Your enjoyment will actually go up. You'll get dopamine activity just by eating an orange. And it won't be addictive. And your dopamine levels will stay up for much longer than it does when you eat chocolate. And so everyone's getting their dopamine levels. The difference is how we're getting them. Are we getting them in healthy ways, and are they staying up there for significant periods of time? This is a psychiatric journal now. Psychiatrists put this journal together. It's a European journal of psychiatry, and it took a look at nutrition and mental health. And here was their conclusion. Diet is as important to psychiatry as it is to cardiology, gastroenterology, and endocrinology. What's endocrinology? That's your diabetes and thyroid conditions. Nutritional medicine should now be considered as a what? Mainstream element of psychiatric practice. So if your psychiatrist isn't asking you about what you're eating and isn't talking to you about nutritional medicine, he's old school. He is not up to date. By the way, what can you do about that? Every year, we have a conference for doctors at Weimar called the Emotional Intelligence Summit. Send your doctor to us. He'll get 20 of the top AMA credits for attending that conference. So that's the only conference he'll have to attend that year to be totally updated. And the American Medical Association is certified to give 25 different hours of instruction to doctors to expand their toolbox in regards to mental health. And so they can learn this as well, and what a difference it can make in their own practice. So it ends by saying, now is the time for the recognition of the importance of nutrition and what else? Nutrient supplementation in psychiatry. One of the things that's been shown to be very helpful is whole plant foods. Eating plant foods in their whole form provide great nutritional benefits. Plant foods exceed that of their component parts. 1 cup of cooked kale has 50 milligrams of vitamin C and 13 units of vitamin E, but the antioxidant potential of 1 cup of kale is equal to 800 milligrams of vitamin C and 1,100 units of vitamin E. The benefit of antioxidants, it reduces the breakdown of neurotransmitters, so you don't need to have all that brain energy consumed by trying to produce all of these. Increases serotonin and dopamine concentrations, especially good for the mental health of women in menopause, and it improves depression and anxiety scores and quality of life. The Human Nutrition Laboratory took a look at the top 10 antioxidant vegetables. Number 10 was eggplant. By the way, eggplant has a molecule in it called acetylcholine. It's the only food that we know of that has acetylcholine, and that will lower your blood pressure if you have high blood pressure. So 1,200 milligrams of eggplant powder twice a day is as good as taking a blood pressure medicine without those side effects, but it also helps your mental health. Corn is number 9, 8 onions, 7 red bell peppers, 6 beets, 5 broccoli. Beets, by the way, also have antidepressant properties called nitrates. Broccoli also has those nitrates. Brussels sprouts, spinach. Number 2 is kale. What's the number 1 antioxidant vegetable? Anyone? Spinach is number 3. Number 1 is garlic. So that's the advantage I have of being married to a Romanian. Every entree starts out with 4 cloves of garlic. You might see some of that demonstrated at the nutrition cooking school Sunday morning. The top 10 fruits. Number 10 is grapefruit, 9 kiwi, 8 cherries, 7 red grapes, 6 oranges. But even more potent than oranges are plums. It's a humble fruit, but loaded with antioxidants. And the top 4 are all in the berry family. Raspberries, number 4. Strawberries, number 3. Blackberries, number 2. And you guessed it, blueberries, number 1. Well, I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to go to bed here at 9 o'clock. So I will, there's so much more we can say about nutrition that will be very helpful and practical for you, but I'm going to encourage you to come Sunday morning and taste the foods. You can find out that healthy food can actually be tasty, and it can, and of course, if it's that way, why go back to the old way of eating those unhealthy, addictive foods? When you can have tasty food that actually isn't addictive and very healthy. And you'll find out some of the nutrients that have been shown in these controlled trials are extremely important for mental health, one of those being zinc. By the way, the antidepressant manufacturers lately on their new antidepressants, they're coming out with a foreign substance because it has to be foreign in order to be trademarked. You can't patent saffron or SAMe. Why is that? Because it's in nature. And so they won't let you have exclusive rights over that because it's already in nature. But they're getting smart now, the pharmaceutical companies, and they're putting things like zinc and magnesium in their antidepressants to try to augment the effect and make it seem like that antidepressant is having effect when they're actually just utilizing the nutraceuticals. Toxic causes, excess copper. We've seen a lot of that. We'll talk about that more on Sunday. And we won't go into all of the zinc aspects of things. Category number 8, social and stress causes. Relational trauma, thinking errors that accompany severe stresses, self-sabotaging behavior, losses, breakups, traumas. And then medical conditions, like maybe a thyroid condition or inflammatory conditions or autoimmune conditions. Head concussion, we need to be protecting our heads. This is one of the reasons why we've had NFL football players and boxers and things like that come to our program. I felt bad for Ronda Rousey when she was winning all those events because I knew her time was coming. And she got knocked out, and she went into severe suicidal depression, almost committed suicide, was in a psych hospital, all of those things. A year and a half later, she finally got out and was healthy enough, and what do you think they did? They put her back in the ring. And it happened again. She can't fight to save her life now, and it's not worth the money. It is not worth the money. Protect your head from injury and concussions. There are some things that you can do to help. I don't think she knew about these things, but one of those things is infrared light, another one is omega-3, so there are things we can do after you have a concussion. But we need to avoid or treat these medical causes. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize, if your cholesterol is high, your antidepressants aren't going to work near as well. Neither are the herbal therapies. So we need to get the cholesterol down for the other therapies to actually work. And this is something that's critical, why we measure everyone's cholesterol. And then frontal lobe causes. This is where our analysis, creativity, our love of learning, our spirituality is at. Music can enhance the frontal lobe. The music therapy that we'll utilize in the program, the studies show it'll have a 2-week enhancing effect on their frontal lobe, not just at the time of listening to the music, but for a long time thereafter. And there are principles to really help that. And then, of course, cognitive behavioral therapy to help change your thoughts into being more accurate and more helpful. So, and then on the spiritual part, we're told even in the Bible, set your affections on what? Things above, not on earthly things. What is our spiritual program? I don't think even if you're an atheist, you have to be fearful of it at all. We do have many atheists come through our programs. We have Hindus, we have Muslims, people from all walks of life come through. But they love our program because we are talking about things that God is equated to. You know, the Bible says God is what? Love. That self-sacrificing, compassionate love is a spiritual principle that all of us can learn more about and grow in. Things that are accurate, things that where we can set our affections on things that are more important, purposeful things instead of things that are so short-term. And so these things will greatly enhance your life, and even people from all walks of life will be able to agree, and as they agree and as they implement these things, their frontal lobe circulation will go up and they'll have a lot better balanced thinking. So it's the most scientifically studied program now for depression and anxiety worldwide. It has the highest N values in the study. Often drugs are released on the market with less than 600 patients taking them, but there's been over 10,000 that have gone through those programs. And it's been shown to be the most effective and lowest cost approach to depression and anxiety. And these are all the conditions that has been shown to significantly help. And the side benefit is your emotional intelligence will go up considerably. So 98% of participants improve at least a category within 10 days. Of course, if you give more time, even more improvement. And in just 10 days, the depression will be totally eradicated in 68%, and anxiety, 81%. So as I mentioned, some need to stay a little longer. Anxiety is thought to be more difficult to treat than depression. It requires higher doses of medicines. It seemed to be even more chronic and lifelong, but in our program, as you can see, anxiety even has a higher percentage rate, and 98% significant improvement. I'll end with the story of Christopher. She's allowed us to tell this story. She's actually told it herself multiple times. As she now runs community programs, she came to our residential program after her 5th suicide attempt. Serious suicide attempt. She was a nurse in her 30s. She couldn't work as a nurse anymore. She was losing money. She had a child, unwed, and her parents were having to take care of the child. And addictions, she was on 6 different antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, benzos, antidepressants, ADHD drugs to try to even function, Adderall. And she came to our program after her 5th suicide attempt and all the psych hospital stays. And she had to stay. She was, in part due to the fact that she was very resistant to the fact that there was a spiritual part of the program. She didn't want to have anything to do with spiritual things. But finally, when she understood what was going on, she was able to embrace that. But that was at day 7. And I said, you know, you've only been through the comprehensive program for 3 days. You need to stay an extra week. She didn't want to stay. She wasn't suicidal anymore, so she did go home. But 3 days later, she recognized she should have stayed. So she came back to the program. And within 2 weeks of that second stay, she was depression-free, anxiety-free. Her focus was incredible without any Adderall. We had found the underlying issues that were causing it. And she even wanted to study the Bible to enhance her spirituality. And she asked to get baptized before she went back. She ended up being employed by the ICU again. But then, within 6 months, she was asked to be director of the ICU. Then she was asked to be director of nurses of the entire hospital in Texas that she was from. And now she's heading up the Emotional Intelligence Committee of the hospital that she chairs, and to try to enhance everyone's life in the emotional intelligence world. Her income has gone way up. She had such gratitude for Weimar that within a few months of the program, since she was making more money, she saw a little fundraiser. We had more students coming at Weimar. We needed more beds, more mattresses. She donated towards that, but when I saw that donation, I said, "Have you paid your parents back yet?" And she says, "You know, I haven't." I said, "Pay them back first, and then you can show your gratitude to Weimar after that." And she says, "Well, thank you. I hadn't thought about that." But within 6 months, she was able to pay back the amount of the program, and now donates to Weimar. And the woman who didn't want to have any spiritual aspects at all is now the leader of a new church right outside of Dallas-Fort Worth, where 85 people have been baptized as a result of going through her community program, where she uses the same principles in an outpatient setting. She says, "I think I save more lives putting on these community programs than I do being an ICU nurse." And so we can get to the root of the problem, and it can be eradicated, and lives can be completely transformed. This is if you want any more information or want to research more, but hopefully you'll come out for the rest of the weekend. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about particularly how to improve emotional intelligence, which we barely scratched the surface of today, and we will also Sunday morning be speaking of nutrition in the brain. And is there I think there's a talk in the afternoon as well. I don't have the brochure. What is that one about? I know I gave you the titles, but I speak about different things when I go places. If someone has a brochure or... Okay. Yes, it's pretty general. So we'll be able to talk about some of the things that we weren't able to talk about tonight, as well as tell some more exciting stories of transformation. So to your health, happiness, and success, thanks for coming tonight, and invite others tomorrow. They won't be disappointed.
Any questions? Dr. Do you have time? Any questions? Let me give you, is your mic still on? Okay, and I'll walk with this mic. And Kristen has a mic. Any questions? I'll take about 4, because we want to send you home to come back tomorrow. That one is on. So anyone has a particular question regarding the presentation tonight?
Just real quick, in the residential programs, do you take people off of their medications to start the program? Any of the antidepressant medications? Or minimize?
Testing. Testing? Yeah, great question. We don't.
Oh, Dr. Nedley, come over because they're streaming.
The question is, do we take people off of their medicine before they come or as they come to the program? And the answer to that is no. We can actually cause worsening if we don't fix the problem first. So in Christy's case, she was on all those medicines. We were able to get her off 2 during the first 10 days. But it took longer to actually, have those nutrition and lifestyle and other principles kick in, where she was able to eventually get off all the medicine and still be depression-free and anxiety-free. So often you won't necessarily be able to get off that quick, but normally within 5 months of the program, the individual's depression-free, anxiety-free, and medication-free. There may be some that have certain scarrings that still need some medicine afterwards. So our goal isn't medication-free. Our goal is to eradicate the depression and anxiety. And if it requires some medicine to do that, then we're okay with that, as long as it's not frontal lobe suppressing medicine. We do want people to get off their benzos. She had a hard time getting off the benzos. She tried to commit suicide, so they took her off the benzos in the psych ward. She went into hallucinations, all sorts of problems. So she had to be put back on benzos, and she was on those benzos in our program, and that takes a slower weaning process to get off. But no, don't stop your medicine abruptly before coming. Stay on your medicine, and we'll only take it off once we have shown that we have fixed the underlying problems.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Dr. Nedley, can you tell me how many percentage of the people that go through your program for anxiety get better?
Yeah, so what we showed was an 86% eradication rate in 10 days. And so the other 14% are going to need a longer period of time to get through that. So that's the residential program. The community program also has a pretty high success. We could have gone through those community program figures, but those figures are about 70% in 8 weeks. And so it's not quite as high. It takes a little longer period of time. And of course, with that, there's no medication adjustments or things like that. It's a mental health education program where you're just applying the education and having a health coach to help you through that on the community program. So both have a pretty high success, but for some people, when they're on benzos and those type of things, they're not going to be able to get off those in the community. Doctors know how to put people on benzos. They don't know how to take them off in general. And they have relapse rates that are very high. So normally it's people like that could greatly benefit from the residential program like Christy did.
Go in, for depression, like what if you had diabetes also? I know you have that also, and weight loss. Are they all together?
So if you do have mental health issues, yes, we can treat the diabetes and the obesity in the actual 10-day program. But we also have another program at Weimar University. It's called the New Start program, and that is if you don't have depression and anxiety and you just have diabetes out of control, or you have obesity or hypertension or coronary artery disease or even certain forms of cancer. And so we run those programs every month. They're in different facilities, close to each other on campus. And the New Start program is phenomenal. I'm not the medical director of the New Start program. That's Dr. Kuni Nobo, although occasionally I help out in that program. But diabetes and depression do have a tendency to go together. In fact, many people are calling it diapression because if you have insulin resistance, it's harder for you to get tryptophan and tyrosine into your brain to make those neurotransmitters. So we're wanting to treat the diabetes through nutrition and lifestyle principles to help the depression.
All right, I'll take one more. I saw Virginia first.
By the way, tomorrow afternoon I will We'll give it more time, so I'm sure you'll generate some questions. If you do, write them down. We'll be glad to answer your questions.
Have you worked with clients with Parkinson's disease?
Yes, so Parkinson's is one of the diseases that can increase the risk of depression, because Parkinson's is a dopamine issue, and it's particularly in the brainstem that you're having trouble making dopamine. And so, yes, we take patients with Parkinson's, although I can tell you a story of a patient who had advanced Parkinson's that we had turned down. Why did we turn her down? She couldn't walk on her own. She couldn't even feed herself. And we don't have 24/7 nursing care to do that. And also, we only have 20 spots in every program. So we're having to choose the ones that can actually do the things. And of course, she couldn't get exercise or get fit or those sorts of things. So she was excluded from the program. But her husband was very persistent. And he kept calling and finally said to the screener, I think Dr. Nedley has more compassion than you. Make sure you talk to Dr. Nedley. Well, she told me what the issue was, and I affirmed her and said, yeah, she doesn't qualify. And then I gave her more reasons. We don't have 24/7 nursing. We can't do that. And so that was his opening. He said, I will come with her. I'll pay the companion price. I will feed her. I will dress her. I will do all these things for her. Please let her in the program. And our program was filled by then. And then 3 days before the program, her Johns Hopkins neurologist, she's from Baltimore, called me and said, will you please let my patient in your program? And I said, you know, she's got advanced Parkinson's. She says, I'm her movement disorder neurologist. I'm the one treating her Parkinson's. But she has a lot of depression, and I know your program will help her with the depression part, and I think that will help the Parkinson's. So we actually, when we saw her, someone canceled on Thursday morning. Our programs normally start Thursday. So she was called to fill that spot. We moved her up to the top. And so she came, and we had to put her downstairs in the wheelchair where there's not stairs to go through. And her husband, the next morning, was taking her out of the inn to go to the cafeteria. And she said, honey, put the brakes on. And so he put the brakes on to the wheelchair. And I had given her a supplement that actually is necessary for you to make dopamine in the brain. It's not a pharmaceutical agent, but it's a supplement. And so she took that supplement that night and that morning, and she stood up and she started walking. And he said, don't, honey, you're going to fall. Do not do that. And she says, get out of my way. And she actually walked uphill to the cafeteria. And that was day one. She did very well in the program. And so, yes, we didn't cure her Parkinson's. She still has a shuffling gait, but her Parkinson's is better than it was. And her depression did get eradicated. We were able to get to the root of that. So yes, it can help, but we're not going to cure the Parkinson's, but we might be able to help it.
Wow, thank you so much. So see, there's more. You need to come back tomorrow, right? And tomorrow you'll have much more opportunities. I hope you're writing questions down if you have them, so that we'll be able to field all those questions. So we have the morning program at 11. Then we have a wonderful potluck that some very dedicated ladies and gentlemen have really spent time in putting wonderful, healthy food together. And that will be after the presentation. And then at 2 o'clock, we'll gather again. And that's when we'll have our second presentation, and that one will be followed by questions and answers. So feel free to come back tomorrow. We have water. As you're leaving, we want you to, if you have not had any water today, feel free to have a bottle of water as you go. I invite you all to stand. Let us say a prayer and be on our way. Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight's meeting. We thank you for all those who came out. We thank you for Dr. Nedley and the wealth of knowledge that you have given him, Lord, to share with others, to make lives better for you. And we pray now as we go that you will give us journeying mercies. We pray, God, that you will bring us back tomorrow safely, where we can learn more And God, I pray that these meetings will help those who it is intended to help, whether those who are online, who are watching, or those who are in our presence. I pray, God, that more and more people will be healed as a result of these meetings, because a seed is planted and they want to know more. So thank you for what you've done and what you're going to do, and we pray for journeying mercies and blessings as we go in Jesus' name. Amen.